Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com. Welcome to the show. This will be my 52 pickup part 2, wherein I look at the DC Comics, the New 52 comics that I've been reading, catching up on those. It's been a while since I did my last, the part 1, the last episode on this. It's been about 3 months and several episodes in between. That was not my intention. I was going to follow this up, after 1 or 2 episodes, interluding between part 1 and part 2. But things just kind of got away from me, and here we are. So let's get right to it. First up is the Green Lantern family of books. And this is a real easy category for me because I only read one comic from that list. Although I did start off when the New 52 launched, I was reading Red Lanterns and Green Lantern New Guardians, but I dropped both of those after the first 6 issues because I just didn't like them. I didn't like where they were going, and it just wasn't for me. So I dropped those. Although I was really disappointed in the New Guardians one because the whole idea of Kyle and the rest of those representatives of the other corps getting together, I thought that was a really neat idea, and the potential stories that they could tell there, I thought would have been really good. But didn't really grab me the first 6 issues. So anyway, but as to the main title, Green Lantern, I've been enjoying that ever since it launched. I was enjoying the title before the New 52 launch, and basically the story. In fact, I think verbatim, the story just continued on from where it left off. Right now we're in the midst of the Rise of the Third Army arc, where the Guardians have basically, and they've said this, one of the characters in the title have referred to the Guardians as having gone crazy. So what they've done is they released this third army to go out and basically suppress or extinguish, probably that's the better term, extinguish emotions because they're chaotic and you can't have order and control and justice with emotions. So they got these zombie-like creatures going out and creating a third army to basically take over the universe. I have to admit, I don't like the idea of the third army in the sense that it's another zombie-type story, and we already had that with Blackest Night, which so far that's been the far superior story in comparison. But I see I see what Johns is doing here, and I'm with him on the ride. So I'm liking it so far in general. I really enjoy the interaction between Hal and Sinestro, especially. I mean that's really how the New 52 version started, with really the focus on Sinestro, and that was a nice turn. And it's just been a lot of fun to see how the two interact and to see Hal take a more subservient role to Sinestro. And it's just been a lot of fun to read. And then more recently, they've introduced the newest Green Lantern, Simon Baz. He's the guy who wears a mask, and I'm enjoying his backstory and looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I think. I'm going to say this, but I should verify this. I believe it's correct that Simon will be the Green Lantern for the Justice League of America book. So we get a Green Lantern involved in that. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So you got the Rise of the Third Army, and then we have the next arc, which is the first Lantern bit. So I'm really curious to see what that's going to be about. I know not a lot of people. I saw some people on Twitter and some blog posts and even some podcasts that I listened to talking about this Rise of the Third Army story. And in particular, there was one person whose name I can't remember, but they were complaining about the Rise of the Third Army and how it wasn't the Rise of the Third Army was the next arc to get to the following arc. And they were saying, well, why even bother with Rise of the Third Army when this next arc is the next thing? And I thought, well, I just thought that was kind of silly because that's what comics are. They're all about one story to the next story to the next story. That's what monthly comics are about. So I just enjoy the ride, just to see where the creative team takes me with these characters that I enjoy reading about, until I don't, and then I drop the book. So I just don't understand complaining about a particular story arc when it's just leading to another one. So I'd rather you talk about the story on the merits of the story itself rather than what it isn't, or the fact that it's an interlude or something. I don't know. I'm not explaining myself very well, so I'm going to move on. Next up is the Dark line of comics. There's a lot of comics here that I read as I compiled this list. So let's see. I'll just start off with the first two, and I mentioned these two in conjunction with each other because they are very much tied together right now, and that's Animal Man and Swamp Thing. And they're doing the Rot World crossover, which has been pretty good. I've enjoyed that. I actually dropped Animal Man after I think the first 6 issues because it just wasn't. Again, it wasn't doing it for me. So when they started the Rot World crossover, I decided to go ahead and pick up the Animal Man issues. I don't think you really need to get both of those to enjoy the Rot World story. You can enjoy it for what's going on in Animal Man, or you can enjoy it just for what's going on in Swamp Thing. But it's nice to have the two sides of the same coin story, if you will. But as soon as the Rot World story ends, I will be dropping Animal Man again, which is really too bad because Animal Man back in the 90s, especially when Grant Morrison was doing it, was just a fantastic title. That was one of my very favorite titles of that time period. So, but a lot of people like it. I know my co-host Travis really enjoys it and thinks I'm crazy for not, but to each their own. And then Swamp Thing, same thing. I've actually been surprised at how much I've enjoyed that title from the get-go. Swamp Thing's never been a real big favorite of mine. I enjoyed the Alan Moore stuff from many years ago, although I haven't read the entire run, just bits and pieces of it. So when Scott Snyder came out with this new version, I was a little skeptical because at that time, I may have mentioned this, but I didn't particularly care for Scott Snyder's work in Detective Comics, and so he's like, okay, so he's writing Batman and Swamp Thing. I'm not sure about this, but I decided to give it a try because I was interested to see what they were going to do with Swamp Thing now, especially after what came out of Brightest Day. And truth be told, that's really what brought me into Swamp Thing was the lead-in that was Brightest Day. So I've enjoyed it, especially when they brought in Abby again to the title. So considering what's going on in Rot World and Abby, I'm really anxious to see how that ends up. But Scott Snyder is leaving Swamp Thing. I can't remember what issue they said that he was leaving, but I think I will probably be dropping the book at that time. And normally what I do is I give, if a creative team gets shifted around, I try to give the next creative team, that first 3 to 6 issues, that first story arc, more or less, to convince me to stay on for a title that that's on the bubble for me. But I find I'm spending way too much money on comics, and I'm looking for any excuse right now to cut back. And so I think I'll be done with Swamp Thing after Scott Snyder leaves. Next up is Justice League Dark, and let's see, that one. I'm keeping with that one so far because of the strength of the concept, and now in the latest issues because of a few characters they're bringing in. Because I have to admit, it wasn't really grabbing me. Even that first story arc, it was I don't know, it wasn't again doing it for me. And I need to stop saying that phrase because I realize I'm saying that a lot now. But I like the concept of it, and I do like right now how they are bringing in different characters. So there's some of the same characters that have been around since the beginning of the title. Madame Xanadu being one of them, and I really like that character now. It's really funny. I never really cared for her in the pre-New 52. But now that she's in the New 52 in the way that she is in Demon Knights and now in Justice League Dark, I really like that character, and I would love to see maybe even an ongoing featuring her. But anyway, so they're bringing this revolving cast of characters, and I really like that concept especially since they also have brought in more recently Black Orchid, which is one of my favorite odd characters from the DCU. You know, there's a few, you know, these C-list characters, if you will, like Black Orchid. I don't know, maybe you can even consider D-list. I don't know what really all that A, B, C list crap means, but I'm throwing out the term anyway. But I've always enjoyed that character, and even before the reinvention by Neil Gaiman in the 90s, I think it was 90s, maybe it was late 80s, I can't remember now. But anyway, I've just enjoyed that character, and then they brought her back, and so she's, right now, the way I'm interpreting that character is that she is a melding of what she was before Neil Gaiman got a hold of her, and then what she has become, or what she became after Neil Gaiman wrote that nice Black Orchid miniseries. So it's nice to see her, and right now they got Amethyst in there, and so it's kind of it's an interesting storyline. But man, that is one book I'm looking at every month to go, am I going to keep this one? And so far the answer is yes. There's a couple titles in the Dark Line that I just wanted to mention, just very briefly. One is, one of the titles in the Dark that I started out with but dropped it very quickly was Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. And then there's Dial H. I dropped that one after the first story arc. It was okay. Again, I like the idea of it, so I was checking it out. But there's just something about the execution that I didn't care for. But there were some moments in that book that I actually quite enjoyed. Some of the superhero, or I won't even say superhero, but some of the characters that were created by the Dial. There's this one hilarious scene in one of the last issues I read where the Dial made the main guy in the story into a offensive Native American stereotype. And the other character in the book, a previous owner of the Dial, she would not let him out because of how offensive that stereotype was. I thought that was really funny. But I dropped that. Next up in the Dark Line, Demon Knights, which I have loved since the very beginning of the book, and that has a lot to do with Paul Cornell and his writing on that book. So I'm sad to see that he is departing that title. Somebody else is coming on, and I can't remember who that is. But I will. This is one of those examples where I will give the next creative team a chance. And as I recall, what they're going to do is jump forward like 30 or 35 years or something like that after Paul's run on the book, and to see where the Demon Knights are in that time frame. And normally, I would say, boy, that's probably not a good idea to do a jump like that. But considering the fact that this is a book that's set in the DCU past, I think it'd be okay. Although I kind of wish we would have gotten a little bit more on some of the characters in the book before this jump, but who knows what's going to happen. So it's kind of like it's sort of relaunching itself already, a year and a half into the New 52. So, but I'm okay with it in this case. Potentially anyway. So we'll see where that goes. And then iVampire, which was a surprise hit. If you listen to the initial New 52 podcast that I did with Travis, where we looked at the number ones and then we checked in at 6 months later. But I did say in one of those episodes where I was really surprised about how much I actually enjoyed iVampire, because initially I thought it was just a way to tie into the Twilight craze at the time. But the art of it was really good, and I was enjoying the story, which is funny because I've never ever enjoyed the Andrew Bennett vampire stories that I had read in the pre-New 52 DCU. However, more recently, I've not been enjoying that book so much, and it was on the chopping block because I just mentioned this on Twitter, that I thought that the book is kind of running in place. It doesn't seem to be going much beyond where it has been for the last 15 or so issues. So I was really looking at dropping that pretty soon, probably after issue 18 or something like that. And then it was announced just recently that it would be ending with issue 19, I believe. So that's a good thing. I don't have to worry about deciding whether or not to continue buying it. I'll get it through the end of the run. May as well. It's only one more issue. And then finally, in the dark, we have the two newest titles to be added to the DC lineup, and that is Phantom Stranger and Sword of Sorcery. So on those two titles, I've read up through issue 3, including the 0 issue. So that's 4 issues, both titles that I've read. Let's talk about Phantom Stranger first. So this is written by Dan DiDio, with art by Brent Anderson and Scott Hanna. Yeah, you know how people talk about Dan DiDio and his writing, and God knows, my friend Travis did not like DiDio's work on, I think it was The Outsiders. So with some trepidation, I decided to buy this because it's Phantom Stranger. I wanted to see what the New 52 how it would change the character, and considering what we found out about the Phantom Stranger recently, where he is Judas, right? And so he is walking the earth, atoning for his sins, which at first I didn't like, because it removed, in many ways, removed the mystery that was the Phantom Stranger. But on the other hand, I really like biblical stories, and to tie that in to the DCU, I thought that was an interesting move. And kind of a gutsy one, because usually DC shies away from any kind of religious stuff other than, just, the generic, there is a God type thing, because they have angels. They've had angels before and demons and stuff like that. So, but rarely do they tie in actual biblical references and, God as an active force. I thought it was interesting what they did there. And I like Brent Anderson's work on Astro City. But I have to say, the writing is okay. Sometimes it's a little, over the top. And while I appreciate the idea of the Phantom Stranger trying to be human in the sense that he has a family, it's not enough. Although I did like the Dr. 13 appearance. I thought that was kind of neat. But yeah, it's just not grabbing me. So it's going to be chopped here pretty soon. One book that I was not thinking that I would enjoy that much is Sword of Sorcery, mostly because I was not into Amethyst back when it first debuted. I never got into that. I know there are people out there, like Peter Rios. I've heard him talking about that, and he has a place in his heart for that story or that character. But I never got into it, like I said. So when I picked it up and started reading it, I was surprised at how much I was actually enjoying it. Although a lot of that has to do with the art, the Aaron Lopresti art. Christy Marks' story so far, it's been okay. It's introducing a character, it's building the world. So there's stuff going on, but it's like, can we how much time, how many issues do we have to read before we get into like the meat of the story? Although I think we're very close to that. But that's not to say that what has come in these 4 issues is a waste or anything. It's just, like I said, it's world building. I like the whole idea of the gemstone houses and what that means. That's always been an interest of mine when those kinds of ideas have been introduced in comics and other stories that I've read over the years. So I like that. But yeah, the art, Lopresti's art on that has just been really good. I really enjoyed it. It's good superhero type art. So I like it that way, in that sense. But this is the really surprising part. The backup story. So they charge $3.99 for this, and so you get the main Amethyst story. But then you also get a backup story, and the first one of that is a retelling of Beowulf. Now, I'm an English major, and I've read Beowulf many times over the years, and it's a really interesting story in itself. But then you get this it's a weird retelling, and I say that because it's using the story elements and characters from the original story with the same kind of names and the same exact situation in the sense that Grendel is terrorizing this kingdom and Beowulf comes in to fight Grendel. But it's told in it's set in the future, I think, or it must be. At first I thought it was telling the story in some sort of alternate universe to the DCU. But then I read, I think it was in issue 2, where the Wayne Tech robots show up, and I saw that. I'm like, what the heck? So to me, this, I guess it still could be some sort of alternate universe type thing, but maybe this is a future story where somehow Wayne Tech has been appropriated by others and used in not so good ways. But it's a weird juxtaposition of this past story of Beowulf. So Beowulf, is a story from our past, right? And so but it's being relived in this future, almost exactly as it occurred in our past. So it's just this weird incongruity, but it works, and I've really enjoyed it, especially. And it's written by Tony Bedard, so which like Dan DiDio, I'm like, really, Tony Bedard? But I'm actually enjoying it, and really it's the Jesus Saiz art that is killing it. So you got Aaron Lopresti and Jesus Saiz on this book, and it's nice. It's nice work. Unfortunately, it was just announced that the title was canceled, so I'm really sad about that because I was really getting into this book. All right, next up is The Edge. And this will be pretty quick because I only read 2 books in this category, and one of those is going away very fast. But I did start off with this category reading Stormwatch and All-Star Western, but I dropped those after the first 6 issues. They were okay. Just, again, not enough to keep me reading after that. And then the others, Grifter, Deathstroke, no thank you. I didn't even bother with those. Not even reading issue 1 on those. But what I did start reading and kept with and still am keeping with is Suicide Squad. And that is one of those books, and I've mentioned this before, but every month I'm reading that book. I'm going, okay, do I keep with this? And the answer has always been yes. Although recently, the last couple issues, and I can tell you why, but I have been starting to think, well, maybe I should drop this book. It's not really keeping my interest, and the reason is that they're tying it into this death of the family crap in the Batman books because Harley Quinn's in this, and I wish they hadn't done that. Plus, they supposedly killed off Deadshot, and he's the main reason I like reading that book. His character and what he has to go through and why he does what he does and how he narrowly gets through everything. But if you read the 15th issue, it ended with the reveal that he's back. So I'm looking forward to seeing him return to the story and how he returns to the story and what becomes of that. But as soon as they can get that book away from the tie-in, the better, I think. And so I mentioned one that I won't be continuing with very soon, and that's Team 7. I was interested in this book because it was going to supposedly tell us about some stuff in the within the first 5 years of the DCU. And it had Black Canary in it. I don't really care about most of the other characters in the book. As I said, there are 2 books that I didn't even bother with, Grifter and Deathstroke, and guess who's in that book? And so far, I just don't care for it. Don't like it. I'm not going to continue with it, and I'm dropping it. Okay, next up, Young Justice. So on this one, I'm reading a couple titles right now, and I'm rejoining a title here in the next month or two. Legion of Superheroes. I dropped that after the first 6 issues because I just don't like what Paul Levitz is doing on the book. The art was fine, but it's just, I don't know, it just wasn't my Legion. And we found out just recently that Keith Giffen will be returning to the book. And I love Keith Giffen's stuff. I really enjoyed his contribution to the Legion with Paul back in the 80s. And then when they did the 5 year later Legion, where Keith basically was running the show, that's one of my very favorite Legion stories of them all. So especially the first year or so of that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Keith Giffen brings to the Legion, and hoping that will keep my interest because I really miss the Legion. I love reading about the Legion. I love those characters. I love the future setting. I just love everything about the Legion. It just, up until now, the book just wasn't grabbing me. And I got to stop saying that too because I realized I got to come up with some other phrases. Because you don't want to hear me say the same thing over and over and over and over and over.
Unfortunately, my excitement over Keith Giffen coming back to Legion may be short-lived. It was reported within the last couple weeks on Bleeding Cool that he would be off after only having done 2 issues. And if that's true, that sucks.
So then the 2 titles that I'm currently reading, Ravagers, I'm dropping that. It's not good. The art's fine. The story though is just it's so 80s in the bad sense, in that it's I don't know, people. It's just characters not doing anything, and it what it reminds me of a little bit is Claremont's X-Men, where it's like this melodramatic thing all the time, and nothing really ever happens, and it's just them moaning and complaining and reacting to whatever the next crisis is. It's just, I just don't think it's very good. So I'm just gonna move on then. Then the next title that I'm reading in that category, Teen Titans. A lot of people have been complaining about that book. But for some reason, I'm still liking it. I'm enjoying the story. It's not the best stuff that I'm reading, but it's enough to keep me going. Part of that might be like the Legion. I have an absolute love for the Titans, Teen Titans, New Titans, whatever Titans. There's something about a group of teenage characters, especially the ones that they have in this book. I just enjoy. Yeah, so I'm sticking with that. But I can see where, if they tweak it just enough, I'd probably be dropping that too. So hopefully they won't do that. I'll continue reading that. So there you go. That's my look at the New 52 comics that I'm looking at. So that's the print comics I'm reading. But I did want to mention the digital comics. They're sort of digital to me, and I'll explain in a second, but there's been some digital-first comics that I have been reading, but I started out with some of them digitally, but now that they are printing those, down the road, I don't know what the time frame is. I'll tell you what, I'll just get into it. So I started reading digitally the Amikami Girls line of stuff. Mostly on the basis of Jimmy Palmiotti being involved in it. So I got those, and I bought them up through the Supergirl story, and that's when I realized, actually it was a little bit before that, but then they started coming out with the print versions of these, where they collect them. And I'm like, well, why should I buy the digital ones when I could get the print ones? Because that's my preference. I was doing the digital ones because Jimmy Palmiotti was talking about them. I'm like, okay, I'll try them out. It'd be a nice way to introduce myself to digital comics, and in a sense of buying them over time, as opposed to usually what I do is when I buy digital comics, I buy these old issues that is a story that I haven't read and I can't find the issues. The back issues, so like, why not? They're on sale. They're 99 cents at Comixology, So I decided I would try this out, reading some new digital comics that were also 99 cents. But then, like I said, they can't start coming out with print, so I totally stopped buying that stuff digitally. So I've been getting those and actually enjoying that. Some are better than others. What I like to see is just the different takes on these characters, and I like the fact that they're focused on the female characters. And then next up is again, I'm talking about digital first, but I'm reading them as they're collected in the print edition. And the next one is Smallville season 11, and which is funny because I stopped watching Smallville after season 2.5 or so, just because it just got too much. It was just over the top, and I just didn't care for it, even though it was a Superman-related series. But when the DC announced this season 11 take, because I read Buffy, I've read season 8, season 9, I'm reading the Angel and Faith comic, which continues that story from the television series. So, DC's doing the same thing with Smallville season 11, but I would have ignored it completely, except that Brian Q. Miller, who was also involved in the TV series, was writing it. So I started buying it, like I said, in the print form, and it was okay. I guess I just don't care for the Smallville universe, but I did enjoy the more recent issues where Batman and is she called Nightwing? I think she's Nightwing in this, but Barbara Gordon taking on the partner role as Nightwing. I read that, so you get the Smallville universe Batman in the story, and that was actually quite good. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But after I think it was issue 8, I think that was the end of that storyline. I dropped that. I just it wasn't enough to keep me interested, and I think it's $3.99. So yeah, I just didn't want that anymore. But the nice thing, the really nice part of this line of books, and very surprising, because it from issue 1 it grabbed me and said, "Oh my God, this is really good stuff. You got to read this." And that's the Legends of the Dark Knight series, because you get these different stories by different creative teams. I think it's 2 or 3 stories per issue. That might depend on the length of the story, but I think I recall it was 2 or 3 stories. But you get these wonderful different takes on Batman and his cast of characters. It's a great comic. If you like Batman and you're looking for something a little different that's not the New 52 version, you should read this comic. There's no continuity. It's not related to the New 52. It's not related to the old universe, although it could be, but it's not tied to that. So yeah, it's a wonderful book, and I'm really looking forward to reading more issues of that. Speaking of looking forward to, there is I saw at Halloween time they released the Lil Gotham digital first, and people were going gaga over this, and that's not even to mention the controversy over what was it, the Stephanie Brown appearance that was later taken out, I guess. It looked like a lot of fun. People were enjoying it, so I was gonna see. What I was gonna do was just go buy it digitally, and then I'm like, wait a minute. And then at first I thought it was actually maybe just a Halloween special. I'm like, okay, I'll buy that, no problem. But then they came out with the number 2 issue. If you can hear that, I'm putting that in air quotes. But the second installment came out, and I thought, well, okay, they're probably going to collect and print these, right? So I was waiting to see if they're going to do that before I started down that path again. And lo and behold, I see in previews that they were soliciting issue 1 of Little Gotham. So I'll be getting that. It should be good. Okay, that's it. That is my look at the DCU New 52. I'm all caught up with that. I'm sure what I plan on doing is every once in a while I'll just talk about where I'm at with certain titles in DC. I'm going to do this for Marvel. I'm going to do an all Valiant talk. I'm just going to take a look at the stuff I'm reading and talk about them with you, and hopefully you will let me know what you're reading, and we'll talk about it in that way. So If you'd like to leave comments about the DC titles that I've talked about here, or any comic, I don't care, either way, you can leave feedback at longboxreview@gmail.com. You can leave comments at the blog at longboxreview.wordpress.com. And I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr. I just created a Tumblr account just to share some things there, but it's really just a repeat of what comes out of the blog. But I know a lot of people like to use Tumblr, and there you go. So there's that. I wanted to mention that Longbox Review is a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network, and you can also find the podcast on Stitcher. So there you go. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.